Folks, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show. This past weekend, I spent time in San Francisco, went over to the Glen Memorial Church where my guest plays, and talked to a guy named Darius Skittles, who had his life turned around by Glen Memorial. I talked to him about John Turk and the music that's played there. But I was deeply affected by what I witnessed in San Francisco, and my guest is somebody who grew up in Kansas City, but has played in the Bay Area, has seen it change drastically. So much rich history and so much to promote. Glen Howell, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
All right, I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Can I ask you about when you moved out to the San Francisco Bay Area, did you ever connect with Charles Sullivan at all?
No, I didn't. When we came to San Francisco, I was a teenager, and so it was a while before I started kind of getting into the music thing. My brother was older than I was, and he was into it right away, but came a little bit later.
So, how did you get hooked into? If you weren't as, how did you become passionate about it?
Well, my brother's a guitar player, Michael Howell, and he's played music all his life. My father played and sang, and we grew up with music, so there was always music in the house. And literally, the first record and/or artist that I was ever aware of, this is a very young age, was Charlie Parker.
He was he was a Kansas City guy too.
Yeah, he was a Kansas City guy, and that's where we originally were from.
Right.
And so, literally, that was the first artist I was aware of. So we always had, Charlie Parker, Miles Davis, all that was always in the house.
That's awesome.
Which is pretty good.
Yeah.
And also, when we lived in Kansas City, that was kind of the tail end of, kind of some big bands and things like that. My father wrote a music article in a black newspaper there, so he knew all the musicians. So there used to be a lot of musicians that came to the house. So as long as I can remember, there were always a bunch of musicians in the house playing. And that was my entire life. And it got to the point, I tried a couple of instruments when I was younger. They never really hit. And then when I was about, 15, some musicians again at the house, and one of them left his upright bass there. Asked if I could try it, tried it, and fell in love with it. Because really, I wanted everybody was playing, so I wanted to play.
Sure, that's right.
So that's kind of really how it all got started.
Did cats like Charles Kennard come over?
I think so, but I don't really remember. There were so many people who came to the house.
Yeah, right. It was constant.
Probably a little bit of everybody came there. When I was younger, some of the names I didn't really pay much attention to, and some of them I remember later. My brother said, "Oh yeah, he came over to the house," but a little bit of everybody came over at the time.
So, what would you say was your first gig, professional gig?
Wow. I've never been asked that question.
Yeah, no, I mean, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show, man.
Well, I had I started playing, and I was in high school. I played in the band in high school because I needed a bass. Because remember I told you there's a guy that came over and left his bass there, but obviously he wasn't going to leave his bass there. So I needed to get a bass, so I joined the band in high school, and there was nobody playing upright bass, so I played upright bass, and then I ended up kind of forming as well as playing the band. And I remember my first piece that I ever really played all the way through was Dvorak's New World Symphony.
Wow! Wow!
And that was what, the 10th grade or something like that. We were horrible at the beginning. I'd never thought that it would sound like music by the end of the semester, but it actually did. It actually sounded like Dvorak. It was great. Anyway, got hold to the bass, and then the next year after that, there was a piano player there, so I kind of formed my own combo. It was piano, bass, drums, and trumpet. Piano player could really read, so that made it nice. And my brother wrote out some charts for us, and we played. So that was kind of the first real gig where we performed in front of the school and a couple of other people. And then after that, started playing a couple of gigs with my brother here and there. So that was probably the first one. Where, I don't really remember.
Well, yeah, that's so classic. What kind of, was it like, what kind of tunes were they? Were they like bebop tunes, or like how would you classify the tunes he wrote out?
Well, the band that I had in high school, I remember we played Killer Joe.
Right.
Right. Couple of blues tunes. They weren't real hard tunes, but something like that.
Yeah, right.
And
right.
It worked. And then when I started playing with my brother, I remember all the musicians, and they'd hesitate. Don't worry about it. You'll hear it.
That's right. I no. I mean, to me, the education that you got. I mean, your brother. In full disclosure, like when I started this radio journey, I never really thought I would ever connect with Michael Howell, and it was one of the major. Listening back to that interview, which I'll send you at some point. I mean, it was sort of one of the early sort of manifestations of me discovering my true nature. So, your family, I didn't realize you were younger than him.
Yeah, my brother, he's almost 5 years older than I am. My brother was always, he was a great musician, really dedicated, and all of my life, he's only wanted to do, and has only done one thing his entire life, and that's play guitar, play music.
Right.
I was a more typical kid. I wanted to, what I wanted to be and do, it changed from 1 week to the next.
Exactly.
So he was the he was the real musician, so to speak, really dedicated and had everything. And that's why he's so good, because he has done and spent his entire life literally eating, drinking, living music.
That's interesting. Yeah, no, he just a really, good cat, like just a good person, too, on top of that.
Right.
But, I really want to know, because I was transcribing my interview with Michael, and he was talking about when he first came out to San Francisco, or he got out of the service, he said, and when he came back, he was playing with Dewey Redmond, and Dewey was like, playing way out, like way out, and Michael was like, I don't know what you're doing. He's like, you'll hear it, and then eventually he went off to play with Ornette Coleman, but like, I want to know when Glen Howell got free on the bass. Like what was that? Who was that meant?
Well,
yeah.
Well, for me, it was a little bit different. Like I said, my brother, all he ever did was play music. I did some other things too. So I played music and did a few gigs here and there, going to college. And I started going to college, and I was majoring in radio and television. I ended up getting a job outside of that as a disc jockey, and it kind of turned things around for me.
Wow.
I won't take you through that whole journey, but I worked for KMPX and KSN, and this was the, quote, rock revolution with radio.
Oh, my God. This is like, oh, my God. Wait. What years were this?
Wow, this was early 70s, early mid-70s.
Yeah, that's my favorite. That's my favorite period of American music of all time.
Yeah, and this is when
insane.
Albums got big, and when radio went from AM to FM, when FM was big, and then long play. So I ended up working for KMPX and KSM, which was two major stations in the Bay Area at that time. They were mainly playing rock and roll. Now we're into the whole rock thing and playing long cuts and all that. So I would also throw in and play some jazz. So I would throw in John Coltrane or whatever. I'd get a couple of, I remember I'd get a memo from the station manager. No, you can't play that. But I was at night. It's too long. You can't play that. And then I was subbing
Oh.
Tony Pigg once for this guy who was a big, Tony Pigg, he's a great disc jockey, worked for forever and ever. Anyway, I subbed for him one time during the day, and he was like during drive time, and I'd throw in some James Brown and stuff like that. So anyway, getting back to your question, that was where jazz was also changing. That was really, John Coltrane and, Pharoah Saunders and Albert Eiler and Archie Shett and Ornette, and, and I just became fascinated and just enthralled by that music. And I met a guy who's a saxophone player, played tenor and alto. I was working on the radio, named Roland Young, and we ended up forming a group called Infinite Sound.
Oh, this is unbelievable.
And it started out just being just a duo. It was just me and him. I'm playing bass, and he's playing tenor, alto, and soprano.
That's insane.
And
that is insane.
we ended up getting an album recorded, and we going outside. I loved it. It was intense, and it was great. We did that for a few years and played a couple of jazz festivals and stuff like that. So, and it was a lot of fun. So that was really my intro to the music going outside. But that wasn't just me. That was everybody. That was just kind of where the music was going, and I just really gravitated toward that and loved it.
The way I look at the early '70s is that, and you can really fill in the details, but I mean, I really don't listen to anything after '74, and I rarely listen to anything before 1970. To me, you had amplified rock was just on the really just starting. So, you like even instruments like the vibes were not irrelevant in electric settings. Okay, so you had that like ambient sound. The record industry was a commerce-based industry, and then you had freeform radio, which allowed you to, I mean, to me, the fact that the station manager even had to call you and tell you not to play Coltrane is pretty pathetic. But still, if there could have been one job for me, that would have been it. To me, people's ears were wide open, man. And I think that's one reason I'm doing my show, is to honestly increase the sonic nature of my daughter's ears and future generations, because it's all getting crunched down now. It's really, really, all that digital stuff is just being crunched.
Well, freeform radio, I love. Like, remember I kept mentioning that, my brother did only one thing because he was just so good at it, even at a young age. And I got really into radio and did that I was still playing, but radio was probably my focus mainly. And was doing a lot of freeform radio for a number of years. And that was great because it also, I had access to records and when they came out. It gave me a chance to interview and meet a lot of people. I remember I got the interview one time. Cecil McBee came to town with Pharoah Saunders.
Sure. Wow.
And Cecil McBee, going way back, has always been one of my favorites. To this day, ended up being one of my favorite bass players. Just monster bass player.
Right. I've interviewed him. Yeah.
So and because of radio, I got a chance to interview and sit down. Because I was on at night doing that, so got the chance to talk to him for a long time. But him, or one night I spent half the night talking with Taj Mahal. He was on. Because I thought freeform radio was the way to go. And this guy, Roland Young, and I, who also had this group we played, we also ended up working on, we ended up doing for the first time, I don't know if they've ever had one since, we started doing a radio show on KPFA here in Berkeley. And we had a 12-hour-long show once a week on Saturday, and it was called Oneness. Oneness. And we were on for 12 straight hours.
Holy crap!
And
That's so sick.
we would go back and forth. He'd do a couple of hours. I would do, because remember we met because he was a disc jockey, so was I. and he would do a couple of hours. I would do a couple of hours, and I loved it. It was great.
Were you playing? Like white bands that were trying to, play funk or psychedelic stuff?
Well, when I was with KMPX and KSAN, it was mainly white rock and roll and blues.
Right.
Mainly. Because even though it was Freeform, it was a rock and roll station. And you could vary a little bit from that, but not a whole lot. Not too much during the day. At night, you could do it a little bit more. There was another great, excellent DJ on there I used to really like, and I became good friends with him named Edward Bear. And he used to play a lot of really nice jazz, but he also played some nice classical stuff.
Here's my, this has caught my attention. Would you talk to the musicians? Could have been Taj. I've interviewed Taj and Cecil, both of them. Would you talk to them, about the spiritual quality of music, or would you talk to them more about the theory? Because to me it's like, I'm not even sure if you guys were so in the thick of it, if you realized that was probably the greatest cultivated time in our country's music history, because all the titans were still alive in all the genres of music.
Right.
The touring circuits were extremely vibrant still. Okay, so you had this huge network going on. You had clubs in every major urban center. I'm not sure if you even realized that. So did you talk to them? The fact is, we lost Bobby Kennedy, we lost Martin Luther King, we lost John Holt. Those are the questions I'd be asking. I'm asking the guys those questions today on my show. Were you asking them those questions?
Well, some of the spiritual thing came out a little bit, because that was a lot of what the music was about. You know what I mean? And, and it really kind of came, and that was the spirit behind a lot of the music. So, yeah, of course, that kind of came out. There was very little talk about discussion that I had with him on the air about theory, because, it is a radio show.
Right.
Theory is not the thing.
But yeah, no, right.
Now, and it kind of also depended upon who it was. But no, there was a lot of that spiritual thing that was kind of talked about, because that was just really, for people that lived in that era during that time, it was a great time, and that was a lot of what was driving music of all kinds. The world was changing. Music was changing drastically. So there was a lot of that, but mainly we just kind of talked about the music, and part of the interview was where they were playing, what they were doing, and there was some of them, like with Cecil McBee, I did ask him, remember talking to him about, and part of that was on the air, about how he approached playing bass and people he had played with, and some of his history, because that was also the opportunity for people to find out about Cecil McBee, and I thought, for example, since we mentioned his name.
No. It's funny because it was never even a thought to record this stuff, right?
Yeah, right now when I was sitting here talking, I wish I had all of that stuff recorded and saved.
See, that's essentially what I've been doing as a host, is a live broadcast on Saturdays and a lot of podcasts off air, and I have a huge I have a huge website, and the whole thing's archived, and I'm thinking, wow. Because that, to me, you were closest to the source at that point, and you obviously had a very wide range in music, just because you grew up listening to, Kansas City jazz, blues, like that. It was Michael. I remember Michael saying you just walk down the street, music was coming out every storefront, everywhere, and
yeah, it was everywhere. It was interesting, and there was a nice mix. Like I remember in the barbershops back then, you go down on Fillmore someplace, and the jukeboxes would have everything in it. It would have James Brown, Hank Ballard and the Midnighters, Count Basie, Horace Silver. You know what I mean? It wasn't just one thing.
Dyke and the Blazers.
Yeah. So.
No, I have been relentless in my, because actually, one of the bastions of this great nest of regional radio and regional communal music was the Bay Area, and you were coming up during that time. I mean,
Right.
it was just it. Here's my question: tell me about your experiences at Jigogu.
Oh, it's Goku.
Yeah, because I was
Well,
yeah. Go ahead, because there was 22 Japanese restaurants. They all played traditional music except this one cat who played jazz. And I've interviewed Mike Clark. I've interviewed Vince Ladiano, like Michael. So many other cats who just burned down there. And I know you must have played. I know you played there a little bit.
yeah, I did. I played, 'cause my brother had a gig there, and I played with him for a long time at Jigoku. And like you said, a lot of the bad cats came and sat in, Mike Clark, Vince Ladiano, all of them. And the regular drummers, as I mentioned drummers, was Eddie Marshall. Eddie Marshall's great drummer.
Oh my God, one of my favorite drummers.
Yeah, Flip Nunez was playing piano. I don't know if you knew Flip Nunez, but Flip was a great piano player. And I kind of got that gig because the first gig I got on a regular one, which I still have, is my brother was working. He also, among other things, he was also working at Glide because Cecil Williams had started Glide Church a couple of years earlier. And that's a whole discussion by itself. But one of the things that Cecil did relative to music, he changed the whole nature of how a church is going to operate. He wanted to bring in, all of the community. He was really one of the individual who, if one believes in any kind of, quote, Christianity at all, he's one person that actually would live a life like that. He didn't turn away prostitutes or anybody else. He told everybody to come to him.
Wow, that was Cecil Williams.
Cecil Williams.
Wow, that's really cool.
Over 50 years.
Wow.
And there's a whole history there, which would be worth at some point.
No. We're gonna hit that really hard. I would like at some point, but continue on.
Yeah. So anyway, when Cecil got there, he wanted to bring in some real music. He's from Texas, so they had a big band, and initially, probably the band was bigger than the number of people that were in the church, but all kind of people in that band. Michael, Flip Nunez, Eddie Marshall, Jules Broussard.
Holy cow! Are you serious?
No, a whole bunch of people in that. Well, there got to be a point where they couldn't sustain that many musicians, so it ended up coming down to a quartet. So it was Michael, Eddie Marshall, Flip Nunez, and the bass player was, I'll think of it in a second.
Yeah.
Anyway, they played for a while, and then for whatever reason, the bass player couldn't make it anymore. And then that's how I got the gig. So Michael says, "Oh, look, need a bass player, so come do this. Just watch Cecil, watch me. We'll be all right." So that's how I got that gig. So that's
watch Cecil, watch me.
don't worry about it. You'll hear it.
Oh my God! I need to know who that bass player was. That is don't. It'll come to you. But was he was a local cat?
Yeah, and I'll think of it.
Well, hold on. So you're telling me that the Sunday music consisted of like hard bop?
Well, no, but it kind of worked out that all the guys, all the hit musicians that were playing, so they'd be working on Saturday night, so they just got up, you finish your gig at 2, 3 in the morning or whatever, and if you went to an after hours, and then they did the church gig on Sunday morning at Glide.
That is so awesome. That is the dawn session. You walk out at 6 in the morning, you go to the church session.
So, needless to say,
oh my God.
I mean, Cecil, as well as being really spiritual and all that, Cecil knows music and knows good music and knows good music will bring people in the church. And you had some of the baddest cats ever played it at one point at Glide. And it's been that way for 50 years. So that's how I got the gig years ago. I'm still playing there. I've actually had that gig I've had that gig longer than I've ever done any one thing in my life other than be alive and breathe. I've had that gig for over 40 years.
I'm so excited. That is such an amazing freaking
Yeah, and everybody,
lineage, man.
and and everybody has at one point or another comes to there. I mean, not only named jazz musicians play, but other people have come and sat in and played. Bono was there.
Wow.
Mary, what's her name? Mary Wells. What was that? One of the Martha Reeves.
Oh, Martha Reeves. Yeah, I just interviewed her.
Martha Reeves. Yeah. All kind of people. I mean, it was kind of like a who's who. But anyway, that's how I got the gig. And Tom Rutley. Tom Rutley was the bass player that I replaced.
Wow.
Tom Rutley was the bass player that I replaced. And and it's gone on. And it's gone on since there. So I did that gig, and in that group, so me, Michael, Cliff, Eddie Marshall, we were also playing at the Jigoku, and various people came through. So
that is.
And I'm fortunate, man, because for me, what that means is I get to play with great musicians. So for me, it was a win-win for me all the way around.
On Saturday, I went over there to Glide Memorial, not knowing what to expect. And I talked to this cat, Darius Skittles, and I'm quoting him here. He says, "I know John Turk. He's the heart and soul of the ensemble at Glide Memorial Church. He's the keyboard player. He's showing love. He tells everybody, don't be nervous, don't be shy, just sing out loud. The ensemble will join with you and make you feel good." And I just wanted you to talk about the love that you try to bring, because, man, I had all my classes today in technology work on, just researching homelessness or spelling the word homeless or, their interactions with homeless people, because I just was blown away by two things, really. One, the fact that the city of San Francisco, there's just not that many indigenous people there from that city anymore. And then the second thing is the poverty. And that's why I went down to Glide, man, because it's just. But I want you to talk about it in a candid fashion. What the love that you bring to that place and what that place needs, man.
Well, Cecil Williams is the heart and soul of Glide. He's been there for 50 years. He has gone through, and he is one of those people that actually lives what he preaches. And technically, it's Glide Memorial Methodist Church. Technically, it's a Methodist church, but don't go off on the Methodist thing, because if you think that, you'll probably get the wrong idea about what it's about.
Yeah.
Cecil has always done his own thing in terms of the approach, but it's always spiritual, always religious, and he has dedicated his entire life to helping the poor and people that are in need. It's grown over the decades that he has the respect of people and organizations all across the country. One of the reasons it's so successful is because even the politicians in San Francisco and the state know that Cecil's for real. He's not a joke, where you get other people who in politics, they'll come in and out, they're popular for a while, and then they'll go out, but Cecil has always remained the same.
Wow. That's freaking awesome, man.
Yeah, and now he, it's grown to the point that they feed, in terms of help, they feed over 1 million people a year, 3 meals a day. There's a program that was started, 25 years ago, when crack cocaine got to be, unfortunately, very popular and started to destroy the lives of a lot of people. And he was actually able to put together a program that has been recognized at the national level that is really effective at kind of getting people off of crack. Because, crack is probably the most insidious drug that there is. It's more addictive than heroin or anything else, and it just destroyed lives for a long time. Cecil also believes, I won't go on too much about this, but he believes that people need to really kind of help themselves and be truthful and everything. And I'm just giving you a speck of really.
No,
What it's about.
it's
really,
no. I'm really digging. I'm just trying to figure out like what is his the key word is authenticity. I mean,
yes, absolutely.
did he draft the like did he bring in an outside? Did he bring in some like consultants about this crack cocaine
No.
thing? It was just
No,
out. It was out of his head.
No, that was out of his head. And
Oh
got
my God!
people
Jeez!
That work with him.
Wow! Wow!
And there's so many programs now that it would be worth your while if you really want to kind of look into this and take this a little further. Is you could set something up and talk to somebody about that and go into more detail with it. Because again, I'm just hitting kind of the surface of a few things. But I'll just say one more thing about it, and it's always been so popular because, the church has been so popular in service. It's because yes, the music is great, but music alone won't do it. It's the message that Cecil has and what they put out there, and people know that it's for real. It's kind of like, unlike, some churches, or some religions, people, get on your knees, and they're always talking about heaven and the hereafter and hell. And, Cecil doesn't talk about it. It's all about right here, right now, and what you do today that is going to be good and help people. It's about right now.
Yeah, I mean that's
anyway,
just spot on,
Yeah. And then on top of that, I have to give Cecil credit because he appreciates good music, good musicians, and that's why it's always attracted good music, good musicians. That's been consistent for decades.
Is Larry Van on Traps now?
He was playing it for a while. He's not the drummer now. The drummer now is a good drummer named Eddie Hall. Larry Van is not playing, but Larry and I are good friends.
Yeah. Did you know the San Jose Cats at all? Like, I mean, obviously Turk, but like Clifford Coulter.
Well, we got a couple of San Jose guys there now. One, Clifford Coulter is playing.
Coulter, I interviewed Coulter's playing at Glide right now.
Yeah. Okay. Right now, the band consists of we've got 2 keyboards, John Turk and Clifford Coulter, and Clifford's bad.
He's a monster player.
Yeah, and drum, bass, guitar, and 3 horns, saxophone, trombone,
wow,
and trumpet. And the other San Jose, he was playing it for drums for a long time. Was Ronnie Beck playing drums for a long time there? He's played with everybody.
Tower Power, yeah, I know. I know that cat. Yeah, sure.
Right.
Unbelievable. That's so. But I mean, going back, did you have gigs in San Francisco outside of the ones with your brother?
Yeah, I had some. Well, and also with the Glide thing, in that rhythm section, and the nucleus of that group would change from time to time, and oftentimes with that rhythm section, I did some things. For example, for a while we had a incredible keyboard player named Richard Dorsey. He died, but Richard Dorsey was a monster. I worked with him for a long time. When there used to be a club on Stanton called Sugar Hill. We used to play there, and so we do a lot of other different gigs, So keeps you busy.
So you had that kind of gig, but would you be doing dawn sessions too?
I'm sorry, say it again.
Would you be doing dawn sessions?
No, I didn't do those. Because by the time I really started playing, there weren't too many after-hour clubs. Most of that was real hot in the 60s, but by getting near the end of the 60s and 70s, they were almost mid-70s. Most of those had gone. The music scene for jazz started to change by the 70s. There weren't as many clubs as there used to be. And then around Fillmore, around there, which in the 60s, Fillmore used to be jumping.
Yeah.
and basically just tore apart the entire black community. Because there were clubs, restaurants, stores, everything. Redevelopment came through and gone.
Yeah, because I mean, I was just hanging with Calvin Keys. He's one cat that hasn't been down to Glen Memorial. He should come down sometime. But he was talking about Charles Sullivan owned all the clubs down there, and every black club west of Colorado. I mean, the circuit was he'd get James Brown and the Flames to Vallejo, Pittsburgh, all over the Bay Area and the outlet towns. And then he was found shot in his car with 20 grand in cash in his suitcase.
Yeah.
I mean, and Bill Graham basically took over from there. I mean, you came like right. You guys pretty much came right around that time.
Yeah. Yeah. And then during the '70s, the mid '70s, a little bit to the '80s, I played with Jules Broussard for about 10 years.
Oh man.
And that was a great band. We worked. Jules is fantastic, and there was a lot of work then, at least for us playing that band, because we were working like 5 nights a week constantly. So that was a lot of fun. That was a good band.
How do you think that getting loose on the bandstand every night helped you develop your individual sound? I mean, there are no venues for younger cats today, but how do you think that playing relentlessly on the bandstand every night helped you cultivate your own sound?
Well, that's what I mean. If you're fortunate enough to play with good musicians and you're working regularly, there's nothing that helps you to grow musically and everything like that. There's absolutely nothing like that, because it's all for real. You're learning as you go, and again, if you're fortunate enough that you're playing also with really good musicians and musicians that are better than you, you can't help but grow and get better. And it's a lot of it. If you love music, man, it doesn't get any better than that. Playing with great musicians, working on a regular basis, love it.
But can you give an example of like working with Broussard, how he stretched you out musically?
Well, I learned a lot of things from Jules. Like Jules, I always thought, for example, was an excellent band leader. Not just because he would manage the band, but he knew how to call tunes. He had a wide range of material that we would pull from old big band type songs to pop to funk, and and obviously there would be adjustments depending upon the venue, and so it really made. And for a long time in that band, I played nothing but upright bass. So even when we got, we start out playing, mainly jazz tunes, probably the first set or two, because we were playing those days. We were playing like 4 sets.
I love it.
And by late at night, we'd have crowd of people start dancing. I was still playing upright bass. I was playing James Brown on upright. So nothing gets your chops together like that.
It's like James Jamerson. It's like James Jamerson,
Yeah. So and that was a lot of fun. But I really learned from Jules how to pace and how to connect with an audience. That's because he was just excellent at it. And also, there would be a point where somebody would say, "Oh, what do you want to hear?" And let me tell you, I don't think there's a song you can't probably name a tune that Jules can't play. That you call out, he can play it. I have the utmost respect. I always liked you. I enjoyed working. I learned a lot from him.
Yeah, no, I've been looking to try to track. He's a monster, man. He's a big player. I mean, do you feel that the Afrocentric roots of jazz disappeared after like 1975? I mean, you said obviously the Fillmore was gutted, but then you said jazz started to change, and like people talk about it being fusion, but I look at it more like I just see jazz over the last 30 years or so or more has become classicalized very heavily and much farther away from the African roots. And obviously, there's a lot of cats that became hip hoppers and they stopped playing instruments. But there's a lot of reasons behind it. But I'm just saying, like, there was an edge and urgency to the music of the early '70s. I'm an expert in that music, even though I wasn't even alive for it. And that urgency and edge was gone by '78, '79. You couldn't find a quartet record with ethnic percussion on it. I'm being a little bit overly general, but
right.
I think you know what I'm getting at.
Well, music, the style of music changed, but there's always been some players that are really getting. I think probably as much as some of the style and the music has changed, which is natural. There's really nothing wrong with that.
Sure.
It's the media started to change, and it started to tighten up in terms of what you would hear on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always been, constantly, there's always been good music out there, but you had to probably look harder to get it.
That's right.
If you want to hear it on the radio or anywhere else, you're going to have to search around to be able to get it. Radio stations, they got bought up, a lot of them, and are now owned by just a handful of people. So you get a similar sound all across the country. Okay, then you have the quote smooth jazz. It has its place. It's all right. That's the name that they gave it, but it's not like that's the only thing that people are playing. But a lot of times, that's all you're going to end up hearing on the radio. I remember even in the '60s and '70s, when I was working on radio, this is the effing thing. All of a sudden, as for radio, there was the quote blues revolution. Where you had Lead Belly and Sun House and people like that. I always thought that was kind of a joke. It's like it's always been there. It's just that you guys just got hit to it. I heard that all my life there. So it's really kind of a matter of and even, one more thing, and also, remember, we used to have records and albums, which I still have to admit that I still love albums because of all the information and everything.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Now, albums went by the wayside, even though, there's a little bit of a resurgence in vinyl, but let's face it, it'll never be what it was. But there used to be, for example, a lot of good, well, I don't know about a lot, but a number of pretty good record stores in the Bay Area where you could get all the hip stuff. You could go in places and, they never going to play Anthony Braxton, for example, on the radio, but you could go to stores and, there used to be a record store out by the old T-Czar called the Magic Flute, and they had all the hip stuff. You could find everything there. Those places don't exist anymore. There's a couple of them here and there, but they, by and large, don't exist. So if you want to hear some music, you just got to search it out, and you got to be able to find it. If you love the music,